It needs to say who you are, and then this is one-on-one, brought to you by New Zealand New Music.
So in terms of who we are, what do we say exactly?
Just,
like,
I'm
You
Harry
can
Lilley
be,
and
you can
I'm...
be Harrington, you can be Harry.
I'm going to do another.
yeah. These are good questions, really, you know.
I don't know, they are what you make of them.
I'm just like going off on tangents, talking about like a random
Don't
stuff.
feel like you have to stick around, yeah?
Doesn't
You
he-
listen to 2 hours so you don't have to hear this twice.
Doesn't he have anything doing music anymore? He's like talking.
Do you love any artists who speak in a language you don't understand, and why?
Well, I certainly do like artists speaking language they don't understand.
I have
And
an interesting take on this one.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily it's hard to say why. I do find other languages very interesting because I don't really speak them, so I find it interesting. And I think that learning other languages, because it changes how you think, might change how you approach the world in some ways. You know, like. But then in terms of artists I listen to specifically because they do that, it's hard to necessarily name a few. But I listen to heaps of artists who aren't, you know, native English speaking.
Right, I have 2 thoughts on this one, and one's that like I like music in another language, but I find it difficult to engage with because I feel like I'm missing a large part of what the music's about. That's just given through the subtlety of what they're speaking about. But then also, I feel like a lot of music you're listening to, even in your own language, so in English, is speaking in a different language anyway. It's like putting on a different voice and a different way of expressing something, and so often you've got no idea what the hell they're on about, but like
That's one
you
thing.
get your own interpretation.
If you appreciate writing when you don't hear the writing in a language you understand, or you don't understand in any sort of substantial way, you are missing out on something. But then I don't know. I guess sometimes when you listen to like really hardcore heavy metal, you can't tell what they're saying anyway, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. The other one is, I quite like Māori music just because it's just cool. It's just different.
It is cool, eh?
And I'm not even talking like modern Māori music. I mean, just it's nice. I got some of my nana's like old, Waita, and they're just different. It's just on records. It's these really tinny recordings and like halls or on the marae and that, and it's just cool. It's just like weirdly local feeling, and
it's also come from a completely different place to a lot of like Western music and stuff. So it sounds very different. Like, it's a different approach, Yeah,
I don't want to get too over analytical. It's just nice to put it on every day.
Well, I wouldn't know enough about it to be able to get over analytical. Grab another one out.
Yeah, let's go.
Grab one down we can't see. Oh, I'm so sweaty. It's really hot. It's such a small room in here. Small room. We're getting the CGI out the sweat.
Let's go.
How do you finish a song or get songs to the point of releasing or finish a
I don't. I'd say at least 2/3 of my musical output never gets output, even though I have good intentions of finishing it.
Yeah, huge amounts of what I create just doesn't really ever go anywhere. It just ends up sort of like, I guess it hangs around. You might use it for inspiration. Maybe you'll take ideas from that.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff one thing I've heard people say is artists never really finish a piece, they abandon it. You get to a point where you feel like, it can stand on, it says what it needs to say. It's not quite what I want it to be because there's an inherent search for perfection when you're creating art, I suppose.
I think you're right with the abandoned thing, but also, for live performance, abandoning trying to change it anymore because you've spent so much time on it already and you're over it is something that I experience a lot. But also, I find recording like quite a nice finality. It forces you to like finish something to the extent that you're happy to release it. Yeah. So half the time I start recording something and never finish it because I just can't quite do the thing to it that I need to satisfy my thoughts on that piece or on how that should go. So part of that's just being too busy and not dedicating enough time and energy to it, and then the other part of it is just like a semi-existential crisis every time I try and finish something.
Well, I guess
about whether it's good or not.
When you finish it, you're like saying it's good enough, and like and then people are going to say, "Oh, what about this?" And you're like, "Oh, well, you don't want to have to justify these things. You want to be able to reserve the right to keep working on something. I suppose.
Man, I was like, just before I came here, I was listening to like an interview from James Murphy, the guy from LCD Sound System, and he was saying about how like in Presley's his life was like not going the way he wanted it to, and then he decided to put some music out, and everyone telling him it wasn't good enough, and then it turned into this massive hit. And like I've listened to a lot of that stuff, and you kind of go, yeah, this is in like a weird state of completion. This early stuff, it seems like it could go so much further, but then also I think there's really something cool about just doing it and like just getting it out there, and like perhaps sometimes the ideas and not the finesse of the ideas speak for themselves. Or
I suppose with a lot of my music, especially with my electronica project, is the songs are inherently fluid. Like when I perform them live, I have the idea that I'm definitely going to improvise a little bit.
Do you ever think about recording those ones though?
I'm planning on actually doing a release pretty soon.
Yeah.
Like
so are you coming to like a finality?
Yeah, no, definitely there are tracks that certainly have a finality that can be recorded and ready to go.
Yeah.
You know, and so there is definitely enough material to put something out now. It's just putting together, like, because the only recordings at this point are obviously like recordings of my live performances. Yeah. Which you could always say are like, you know,
they're like a demo almost.
Of sorts, you know, and in some senses the live versions are very much a demo. Some of the live things I put out were entirely improvised and aren't going to be recorded, you know. Yeah. But then sometimes something you might improvise live and then record and look, you know, listen upon later might end up becoming a track which will get recorded properly. Yeah. But very soon I will be doing some sort of, you know, proper recording being released out, I believe.
Nice. Yeah, well, hopefully soon I'll be doing some recording.
Yeah.
I keep saying that and it never happens. So.
It's hard to record because it's not hard to record. It's hard to record to be happy with, like, you know, unless you're like that buckethead guy and you just put out like 100,000 albums a year or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about...
How do you even do that? You're just like, well, I recorded 3 albums this morning. You know, like... I don't even really listen to him. I hear he's a really good guitarist, but I don't know, it's hard to record that much stuff and really know that you're chiseling it down to good material.
I don't know. Like, my experience of recording is always like this conflict between recording something artistically good and recording something technically, or like in a way that sounds good and supports the artistic stuff, and then often I find myself coming back to the idea that the artistic side of it, the bit that I created before I came to record, isn't good enough. And so that's the problem and not the recording, because I think you could record something pretty crap in terms of quality and in terms of the way you put it together, but if the ideas sound, then it won't really matter.
You can just say you're being like artistic, you're being lo-fi or something if it sounds like shit, you know?
Yeah. Come on, let's do another.
Let's get you beginning. Do you remember your first favourite band? What was so great about them?
First favourite band?
It's really hard to say. I remember one of the first bands that I really liked when I was quite young. I guess I would have probably been 6 or 7. One of the first bands I really decided sort of like that actually knew probably did have a lot of artistic integrity rather than just liking some random crap. It's probably the Smashing Pumpkins, actually.
Cool.
Like I remember when they put out Melancholy, I thought it was great. Yeah. You know, I remember seeing the ads when I was like real thinking this is like really interesting music. It's quite different to like it was good album. It's still something I listen to now. So I suppose that'd be a good example of my favorite. I wouldn't say they'd be my favorite band now. Yeah. But they certainly made some good albums.
First favourite band is hard because it's sort of like what you're saying.
It's really hard. Yeah.
How do you figure out what was? Yeah,
that's
favorite?
why I'm just sort of saying that's what I would say.
I have this weird idea of like you kind of go through phases. I feel like the trajectory of it is almost you get more and more favourite bands, as in like you get more and more intense into your like bands. And I think it's like an adolescence thing where or like my experience of it and seeing other people go through the same process is sort of like it's like idolism and trying to appreciate someone else's culture and style and things like that and their creative outputs until you get to finally. Because it's almost like a search for like who am I and what do I want to be? Yeah. And then you tip over and go, oh, I'm an amalgamation of all this stuff, and I'm my own interpretation of it all. So, if I went right back, I can remember being really into this boy band called Five when I was 4 or 5 years old. That I remember I had a cassette.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I scratched that. It was the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, it's the same era.
That's probably the first favorite band I would have been into.
Yeah, and like so that was like, but perhaps that was just I knew that they were called Five. I remember they had.
I remember that band definitely.
And, that's that's like I can remember that being my favourite band at the time, and being asked what your favourite band was and saying.
Yeah, no, exactly. Now you bring it up, that is what I'm...
What's sad though is that all I can remember about that band now is that they did a Queen cover, We Will Rock You. And I remember really liking that, and then hearing the Queen version, not really understanding that they were different bands, thinking that they were the same band.
Oh no.
And also, for some reason, I have this idea, still to this day, that the is it the Bloodhound Gang song, Nothing But Mammals?
Oh yeah, I remember that song, yeah.
I had this idea that, and at the time I had this idea that song was a song by Five, and I think that, like, you can see my level of musical awareness being illustrated by...
I can believe that,
You could probably pinpoint our collective ages based off that too.
Yeah.
How exact is your creative process? Do songs always begin in the same way?
Do songs always begin the same way as each other?
Perhaps maybe like in terms of how do you create
the writing process.
Yeah.
Does that begin the same way?
Well, I guess a lot of what I don't really sit down and think I'm going to make this sort of song and then do it. Though I suppose occasionally I have done that. Though generally speaking, like tracks and songs emerge out of just improvising, or they emerge out of jam sessions with other people.
Yeah.
You're just playing or anything, that was good, I like that, you work on that for a little while, turn that into something. That's probably the main way I do it, really.
I think I have two main ways. The first is like I'll be playing with someone, and usually it's when I make a mistake and I do something different that would not be what I would naturally go to. That's where new ideas come out, because it's like I've done something different in the heat of the moment, and then I go, oh crap, how did I do that? That was cool, and try and like build on that. But then the other one I know, because most of the music I've written has started out, the vast majority has started out of moments of intense stress and pressure trying to get an assignment done or something like that. And for some reason, when I have to do lots of work, part of my like processing the thinking behind the work, or like how to write the essay or whatever, usually results in me playing and creating something completely different while I'm processing that. So
I find when I'm trying to write, or if I'm trying to do like editing or something, I will play guitar and stuff, and it does help the thinking process.
And I just almost every time I end up writing an essay now, or end up writing a significant piece of work, I end up having this dual output of like, here's this technically well put together thing that's explaining an idea or something in written form, and I've also created this idea musically at the same time, and it seems to just happen that way. So perhaps I need to just keep making myself do essays or keep studying.
Well, procrastination's a pretty effective tool for doing things.
I don't think it's procrastination though. I think it's just part of the actual like internal processing, because I find I couldn't sit down and just write an essay, right?
It is difficult to just sit down and write it.
You gotta like, it's almost like you gotta put all the ingredients in and just let them sort themselves out internally for a while, which is why trying to write your essays the night before they're due is not a good idea.
Do you usually find yourself connecting more to a song's lyrics or music?
More than music, I'd say.
Yeah, I was going to say, I connect to the music more so. I mean, I definitely do connect to good lyrics and well-written lyrics, but I don't tend to do a hell of a lot of lyric or songwriting myself in terms of that way, so it's the music I'm interested in.
Yeah, I think I tend to connect to like crack-up lyrics, or lyrics that stand out like as kind of being like, this is not perfect, but it's really like interesting or funny.
I like, I don't know, I suppose I like well-crafted lyrics that are really good at expressing complex emotions and stuff, like things like Nick Drake or Elliott Smith I find really quite good.
Right.
I think that's really interesting, really good songwriting,
I think the like metaphorical lyrics, like when someone says something really either like metaphorically really well constructed or really astute, like something, they just put something out there and you're like, oh wow.
Yeah, it's always
you're so right, man. Like,
when someone's got a bit of a Bob Dylan, Woody Guthrie sort of style, like, this machine kills fascists written on their guitar, they're sticking to the man sort of,
Yeah, but also just like, it'll be in the, like, disguised in the middle of something, and you just hear like 3 words put together and you're like, oh, whoa. Yeah, you're so right. And you just, it would probably be on like the 20th listen or something like that you'd actually notice those 3 words, because they're just sort of embedded into the general noise of the track. Yeah, well,
so I suppose some songwriters will have like different layers of meaning to their stuff, or it's possible to interpret their stuff under different layers,
Yeah, I'm a real fan of texture and like the way layers of things are put together, especially with like guitar music and stuff. And so I tend to get more interested in that. And if a song or a piece of music is like texturally engaging, then often it doesn't really matter what the lyrics are. If the lyrics are just like an equal part of the texture to me, then they're like, how they fit together is sort of already...
A lot of time with music, I see the lyrics not... Some people will view lyrics, the singing, as like being above the rest of the music or saying. I see it as just the beginning. It's another instrument, really.
Yeah.
And sometimes it sits there for the sound and the tone and stuff, not necessarily what it's literally saying.
Yeah.
You know? Looks like we're on to our last question.
Should I do it?
Yeah.
That's a real satisfying ding.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ding!
Ooh.
Oh no, it was ooh.
How do you design your live show?
How do I design?
Or is it just a result of playing your music live?
Yeah, my live shows generally a result of playing my music live. Like a lot of it's just about, I think, like it's based around just playing really well. Making a technically very proficient show in terms of playing well,
delivering the music,
delivering it very well. And I guess because I don't necessarily perform in any particular way, I suppose, really. And I guess inherently with electronic music, considering when I perform, I've got a desk cover with a bunch of flashing boxes.
Yeah.
It looks interesting, and I suppose, it's a bunch of interesting stuff going on. There's like this mad scientist-esque thing happening going on, I guess, in the way that people don't really understand what you're doing a lot of the time. Other electronic musicians do. But I've had people say, like, people come to my show, especially people who aren't musicians at all, and they'll say, it's interesting to watch you do it because we've absolutely try as we might, and I knew this before I started learning to use electronic instruments. Is like you watch them do it, you know they're definitely doing something because it's affecting the music so much, but you just can't figure out what they're doing exactly.
Yeah, you need to know.
As far as you can tell, they're pushing buttons and twisting dials and holding down this button and putting that one.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting. Yeah, perhaps the conception of a show. I think about that more now than I used to, but even now I tend to just try and think of how I can, or we as a group can deliver music in a way that either creates some sort of overarching vibe and maintains an engagement. Particularly for me, the problem is between songs when you're trying to tune a guitar. How do you do that?
See, I can offset to these like devices making noise.
Yeah, and we've done that too. Like with someone puts a chord or something like that,
here, or why I reprogram this one or whatever.
But then there's part of me that is trying to battle that with like just don't overthink it. Just stand up and just play your music, and like whatever happens, and like. Perhaps you need to just be more worried about making good music.
I find that as long as you prepare properly, you can actually prepare. You know what you're going to do more as far as you need to.
Yeah.
If you don't overthink it, you do your best shows because you'll be in the moment and you'll.
Yeah.
Because like I see, my shows are about creating an atmosphere and creating a feeling and trying to maintain that and move through different ideas throughout the show, depending on what I want to do that show.
Yeah.
As opposed to doing before, like I'm not trying to have some sort of elaborate stage show like Alice Cooper, where all of a sudden it's like an execution, and I'm like spitting blood and there's fire exploding, like that'd be cool. I am going to do that in my next show, but still, up until this point I haven't been doing that.
Yeah. The other one that preoccupies me a lot is like good classic, between songs, guitar tuning, and what we call banter.
Yeah, banter. See, I don't know how to do that.
What's your banter and like how good is it? Because some bands have strong banter game. And
some bands have horrible banter game.
Yeah,
it's like,
the strong banter is just so entertaining. It just does so much for your like.
I like it when bands uses banter just a bunch of feedback. It's like they cheat tune. They're like the tuning guitars like just like feedback. It sounds cool and unhinged and badass. That's cool. Yeah. But also my like mid-set banter is just like I'll play samples. Like you'll notice sometimes I'll punctuate with a sample.
Yeah.
Which may or may not be trying to contribute to the overall feeling of the set.
Yeah, I think I heard like a SpongeBob one.
Last time there was a SpongeBob imagination sample.
So yeah, I think I get worried a bit that my poor because sometimes the banter games are good and sometimes your poor.
You just got to make sure you're drunk enough, but not too drunk.
Yeah.